Hello, welcome to this channel. My name is Janet and I'm working through the King James's Bible. Today I am in the book of Samuel, the first book, and we are finishing off the final chapters today. So we'll be working through chapter 27, 28, 29, 30 and 31. So 5 chapters. So if you are sitting comfortable, then we shall begin. Now, if you've been following this book, you will know that King Saul is jealous of his servant David, who fought Goliath, he won the battle, and he has become very successful. And that success has made King Saul so jealous of him that he's decided he wants to kill him, which has made David now a fugitive on the run all the time from him. Now, in 2 cases, David chose not to kill him, and they seem to part ways amicably and peacefully. The second time is where we left off the book yesterday, where King Saul said he was not going to kill him, that he was going to leave him in peace, and they parted ways. That's how it ended. Now, that had happened once before, and King Saul changed his mind. So as we begin today's chapter 27, David is deciding that he thinks King Saul is never going to give up this constant hunt for him. So he decides to go into the Philistine territory and go back to King Achish, who lives in Gath. And that's what he does with his 600 men. He goes there and King Achish is in favour of him living with them. So he's living in his royal land, that area there, for the time being. Now King Saul finds out that David has gone there and he does decide he's not going to pursue him. He leaves him alone. So David goes to King Achish and he says, if you found favour in my eyes, can you give me a place to reside, a city of my own? Because he wants to rule his men in his own way, he doesn't want to follow their way. So King Achish agrees and he gives him the city of Ziklag to reside with all his 600 men and the rest of their families. So that is where he lives, and he stays there for 1 year and 4 months. Now David's really changed as a person. You know, he is an Israelite, he's now living in the Philistine territory, and he becomes a raider. He starts raiding and looting from the Gerahites, the Gizites and the Alchemites, so the enemies of the Israelites. But when he loots from them, he kills everyone. Nobody survives, and he takes all their livestock, their donkeys and their camels and their clothing. Now the king would often ask him, okay, where have you been raiding today, David? And he would say to him, oh, I've been raiding in the southern areas of Judah. So he's making out that he's raiding from the Israelites, which makes King Achish quite happy, you know, that he's helping in a way fight their enemies. But this is a lie. He's not doing that at all. That's why he's killing everyone when he goes to these areas, so that nobody will go back to King Achish and let him know that he's actually attacking these camps and not the Israelites at all. So King Achish thinks this is what's happening, that he's attacking the Judah tribes over that way, the Israelites, and this keeps him happy. Now King Achish brings up to David that, you know, when they go into battle with the Israelites, that he has got to be by their side and he's got to go into battle with them. And David agrees. He says, I am your servant, that he will go to war against his own people. So King Achish is thrilled with this and he makes him his chief forever. And that closes chapter 27. We then open chapter 28 with the Philistines and the Israelites going into battle. They're going to go to war. And so David is now put to the test. Is he going to go to war and become King Achish's bodyguard? And yes, he sets off. That's what he's about to do as they're getting ready. He gets ready with the rest of the Philistines. And obviously the Israelites will be getting ready at their side. So we go back over to the Israelite side and we are reminded that Samuel is now dead. The prophet Samuel, he's no longer here. And King Saul had removed all spiritualists and any mediums out of the territory. So they'd been killed, or he didn't want anything like that in his territory. Now with the war starting to wage with the Philistines, Saul has become very afraid. And he wants to consult with a medium. So his men tell him, well, there's a woman, a medium, in Endor. So Saul sets off to meet this woman. He goes in disguise and he takes along with him 2 men. Now, when they come to her, although he's in disguise, they're asking to speak to a medium. She's like, no, I can't do anything this, because King Saul is against all spiritualists. You're just setting me up. This is a trap. And they assure her, no, we're not. This is not a trap at all. And Saul asks her to consult with Samuel. He wants to hear from Samuel on the other side. So she does. She connects with Samuel and then immediately realizes that it's King Saul in front of her. And she shouts, why have you deceived me? She's obviously scared that he's going to kill her now, knowing that she's a medium. And he said, look, don't be afraid. Please, don't be afraid. Just tell me what you saw. What did you see? And she tells him that she sees a man in a robe. Well, then Saul knows immediately it's Samuel. And he's asking why you've disturbed him. And then Saul says, look, the Lord has left my side. He's no longer with me, and we're going to wage war with the Philistines. And Samuel says, God has taken land from you because you were disobedient, and you fought with the Amalekites. And he said, the Philistines are going to win this war. Now Saul, on hearing this, is so shocked that he falls to the ground. And the woman makes food quickly and she offers that to him. But Saul refuses. He doesn't want to eat. He's in like this state of panic. And his men and her really say, come on, you're going to have to eat. You need this energy to travel back to where you've come from. So he agrees, and they eat that evening and then set off back. And that closes chapter 28. Now with chapter 29, we're going back to the war scene. Now, although King Achish had seen favour in David and he wanted him alongside, the majority of his people did not. They didn't like that he was there. They're like, what are you thinking bringing him along? He's our enemy. He's killed so many of our men. He's killed their great Goliath. They don't want him there. They want him out. And so David wasn't allowed to be there. And this is a good thing, really. This is God working through, because if he had gone there, he would have been fighting against his own people, which would put him in a real predicament. But not only his own people, God as well, his own God he would be fighting against. And if he'd chosen to fight with the Israelites, then he would have looked like he was a traitor to King Achish. So he could not win if he'd gone either side. So it's best he's not allowed to fight. Now at the battle camp, the leaders there speak to King Achish and they are not happy. They're not happy with him all. In fact, they're angry with him for bringing David to the battlefield with them, and they want him to send him on his way. They said, send him out, we don't want him here. So King Achish tells David, you're going to have to leave, you're going to have to go back. You and your men will have to leave. So David returns with his men back to the land of the Philistines, and the Philistines themselves, they go to Jezreel to battle with the Israelites. That closes chapter 29. Now in chapter 30, we find out that while David has been away from his home, Ziklag, the Philistine land where he was living, the Amalekites had been there and they'd raided the entire city and they'd taken their wives and they'd just decimated the city. Now they are just shocked at what they have found. And his men, on seeing this, are so angry. They blame David, It's like, why did you bring us here? And they want to stone him at one point. But David uses this time to consult with the Lord, and he asks, should he go after the Amalekites for what they've done? And the Lord says yes. And when he gets there, he will recover all of his people. So he goes with 400 of his men, because 200 are just too weak and exhausted from the walk, the journey to where they've come. So he takes 400 of his men. And on their journey they meet a man from Egypt who had been a slave, but he'd become quite sick, and so his master had left him. Now this slave was able to show them where the Amalekites were camping. And when they get close to the camp, the Amalekites are celebrating, they're in this glorious state, they've been drinking, so they're intoxicated, and so it's perfect for them to attack, because they haven't got their wits about them, they're not ready at all, and so David and his men attack the Amalekites. And they win. They are such easy prey, they kill everyone. No man escaped and none of their men were killed. And they saved all of their wives and their livestock. Nothing had been sort of destroyed. So they were lucky, really, that everything was still intact. And then they had all of the loot as well from the Amalekites on top of that to take with them. Now, David was really kind in this way that he distributed this between all of the neighbourhood villages which were around him. He He gave them lots of the things that he had taken from the Amalekites. And so on this reunion and this way of spreading the wealth, we close chapter 30. So our final chapter, chapter 31. This is the big war between the Philistines and the Israelites. And it takes place at Mount Gilboa. That's where the camp is, the Israelites' army camp. And the Philistines just slay them. They really do. It's just a big slaughter. And the Philistines pursue, and they get to King Saul. They get to where his sons are. They kill all of Saul's sons, all 3 of them. So that includes Jonathan, which was David's really great friend. He is killed. Abinadab and Malchishua. Now the archers, the Philistine archers, had hit Saul quite badly. He'd been hit with arrows and he was really badly wounded. Now he goes to his armor bearer next to him and he tells him to get his sword and to kill him, that he did not want any Philistine killing him fully. And he couldn't do it. His armor bearer was too afraid. He didn't want to do it. And so Saul gets his sword and he falls his whole body on top of his sword and kills himself. Now his armor bearer sees this and he is like devastated that his king is dead, and he does the same to himself. He gets his sword, falls upon that, and both of them are there dead on the battlefield. Now all of the Israelites that had gone into battle that day are killed. It's just a massacre. And once the Israelites on the other side of the Jordan River hear of this, what's happened, they flee their land, and the Philistines take it over, and they then dwell in those areas. Now when the Philistines go back to gather what they had basically destroyed, so they're looking for the loot and that kind of thing, they find Saul and his 3 sons, and they chop Saul's head off and they take it back to their camps and his armory and his sons, and they put the armory in their temple, and it's kind of like showing that, look at our God is stronger than your God, and that, you know, how we've come and won this war. So they're letting all the people know that the victory that the Philistines had had, and then they take Saul's body and his son's body and they pin it up at Ben Shah. Now this is just total humiliation for the Israelites, and some of them hear of this, and brave as they are, they go to this area and they take down their bodies. Then they take them to where they are, they burn the bodies, and they get their bones and they bury their bones under a tree at Jabesh, and then they fast for 7 days. And that, everyone, is the end of the book of Samuel, the first one. So we have finished. It has been a great battle in many senses. If we look through this, you know, we saw Samuel come into his own, have that connection with the Lord, become a prophet, and he has been doing that all through his life, giving these prophecies. David comes into it, a very prominent figure in this book, along with Saul and their battle together. The jealousy, how it's pushed a man that probably could have won for them, and he has sort of turned, it's gone into such a roundabout way. So now we find that the Israelites have lost a big battle now, and they have fled from their land, so it's getting less and less. So let's hope there's a turnaround for them, you know. But these are the things that happen to make us change, I guess. We have losses in order to realize what we had in the first place. So we will close today's book, and we will close today's video, and I will be back soon opening the next book in Samuel, part 2. So hope to see you all then. Thanks for watching. Bye.